So guys, welcome to another presentation. Today we're going to look at recreating the camera's JPEG file in Workspace. And we're basically following three easy steps. The first is to synchronize my color space across my equipment. The second is to transfer my camera settings into Workspace. And the third step is to export the camera's JPEG or a copy of the camera's JPEG from Workspace. So here you see my Workspace display. The first step is to synchronize the color space or the color profiles across my equipment, and I typically do that by going to my settings, my system settings in my Mac. And if I look at the display, then you can see that I'm using the Adobe RGB color space here. Now in terms of editing software, there's not really an option to select the color space in your editing option, and the reason is simple: is the editing software uses the color space embedded in the file, in the image. So for example, here we can see that the color space was Adobe RGB, so that's a camera setting, and from the XF data we can also see I used Adobe RGB, which I always use in my Olympus cameras. That means my images are automatically synchronized or in the same color space as my Mac PC or my editing software. So I'm not risking changing any of the colors by using a different color space on my Mac PC, for example. I'm not 100% sure how this would work for Windows PCs, but I guess it's the same step. You would go to the display and then look at what color profiles you can use. I don't really measure my display because I found through the years it's just easier to use the same like Adobe RGB for my equipment, for the different equipment. Plus it's easy to synchronize to the camera that way, because the camera basically only have two options. The one is sRGB and RGB. So now we're working in a singular or in the same color environment. The second step is then to transfer my camera settings to Workspace, and I simply do that when I open the enhanced raw file. Now the reason I call this an enhanced raw file is because my camera settings are included in the enhanced raw file, and I can see that on the right hand side here. So this one here, for example, is the color space the camera used for this image. Here you can see people would typically select the auto here, or something like sunshine or clouds or shadows, but the moment you do this, then you are selecting, then you let Workspace do the white balance reading. We want to use the camera's white balance reading, so I need to select that here. Just to show you, if you go to the next image, so look at this value here, 5935. If I go to the next image here, you would see a change to 5956. So the camera is taking multiple white balance readings across the display or the scene to determine the white or a more accurate white balance reading for the scene. Now imagine you place one gray card in the image, and you're now going to use that gray card to select the white balance for your image. It's going to be very difficult to copy what the camera did with one gray card in the image, especially if you're looking at different types of light, shadows or clouds or direct sunlight, or if you're looking at illumination or reflected or luminance, reflected light. So it can become very complex to determine an accurate average white balance for your scene. So if we go back here, we now selected the camera setting. We don't need to select any of the other camera settings, for example the highlight shadows or the tone curves here, the gradation. This is what the camera, Workspace automatically takes this information and includes it in what we see. The only thing that you could change is the auto setting here for the noise filter, and the reason I do that is you don't find this option in your camera. Now I don't know if the camera does it automatically and therefore Workspace selects it like it does here. It could be, but to be safe I just deselected that. I want to show you also important thing is don't adjust your raw file if you want to replicate the camera's JPEG file. For example, I like to use eye enhance in my cameras, and I normally select the low option, and as you can see, the moment I select eye enhance, the colors are changing, so the image is changing. So now if I now export my JPEG file, then it will not look like the camera's JPEG. So I need to deselect, or go back here, rather go back here to natural, deselect it just to be safe. Now I'm back to the camera settings. Now I can, and the third step is to export. So now I can export the image. And here you can see the camera superfine setting is automatically part of this. So if I go to a JPEG with XF data, it would then pick up the superfine setting here, and I can now export the camera's JPEG by pressing this option here, export. I'm not going to do that. I've already got an example. If we go to Bridge from Adobe, then you would see I have a cropped version of the image I used in the article. Here I have an uncropped version of the TIFF file, the 16-bit, and I've got the JPEG version. So here's a JPEG cropped version, and here's a JPEG non-cropped version. And then if we go to Photoshop, you can see that I've opened the cropped TIFF file here. And the reason I want to show you this is the TIFF file gives me similar characteristics as a RAW file. But the main difference here is you're now working 100% in a Olympus color space. So I transferred my Olympus colors to Photoshop, and I'm editing Olympus colors. It's really difficult to write profiles and to edit your image in Photoshop to get the same colors as what Workspace or the JPEG file from the camera would be. In this case, my TIFF file uses the same colors. And now it's easy, so I can select Ctrl J here to duplicate the background layer, and then I can open my raw filter, my camera or Adobe's raw filter. This is similar to the Lightroom filter, and I can do everything that you would typically do in Lightroom. So I can bring down the highlights a little, I can up the shadows a little, and I can open that. So that means my second layer is now a Lightroom raw filter conversion, and then I can flatten the image. So now I have my converted Adobe image here, and now I can start editing the image. Whatever, if you want to bring down the backgrounds a little bit, or if you want to highlight the subject, whatever you want to do in a typical editing sequence, you can now do it. But again, we are working with Olympus colors. So guys, we're basically done. Enjoy your Workspace, enjoy your Olympus cameras. These are really fantastic products, and the better you get to know them, the more fun it is to use these products from Olympus. Thank you.